Hey guys, welcome to Tech Vitals. Today we are going to learn about list comprehension in Python. So, list comprehension is basically used to create the new list from other lists or other iterables using the less amount of code. So, let's say we have a list. So, let's say old list equals, and then we have the numbers from 1 to 5. Now we want to create a new list, and inside this new list we want to have a square numbers of all of these items. So we want to have the square of 1, that is 1, then the square of 2, that is 4, the square of 3, that is 9, the square of 4, that is 16, and the square of 5, that is 25. So one way of doing this is we can use the loop to loop through all of these old list values and then store the square numbers in the new list each time the loop is executed. So first let's create an empty list. So right now the new list is empty, and now we can use the for loop. So for numbers in old list, now this num will iterate over this list values. So we can say new list dot append. So using this append method we can add values in the list, and we want to append the square of each numbers in the old list. So this num will store this each value one at a time. So we can just append num into num because we want to store the square value. So this for loop should store all the square values of this old list into this new list. So if we try to print the new list, and let's run this. So here in the new list, it stores the square values of all the old list items. So we have 1, 4, 9, 16, and 25. So if you take a look at our code, then we have this 3 lines of code. So at the first line we created an empty list, in the second line we started the for loop, and in the third line we appended or we added the square values in the new list. But using the list comprehension we can do the same thing in just one line. So we can just get rid of this for loop here, and inside this square bracket we can say num square num, then for num in old list. So this one line will create the new list, and it will store all the square values of this old list. And if you try to print the new list again, so as you can see it still worked the same. So we still have 1, 4, 9, 16, and 25. So in list comprehension we run the loop within the list. So if we just take a look at this part, so we have for num in old list, so that's the same as we did while creating the for loop. So here we are looping through the old list, and we are using this num variable to store each value of this old list. So the measure variable is num because num is storing each values of old list. And then now if you take a look at this part here, this is the actual value or actual result that is going to be stored in this new list. So before this for loop, this portion is for the item or for the result that is going to be stored in the list, and this portion is the for loop. So let's say if we use some other variable than num, so let's say we used number. So now if we take a look at this for loop, we are looping through this old list, and we are storing each value of old list in this number variable. So now we don't have any variable called num because we have number variable. So we can change this result or the value to number, and this should work just fine. Now let's say instead of storing the square values, we want to store the cube values. So we can just do number into number into number. So we can just add one more multiplication for the number. Now this should store the cube values of all these old list items. So the cube value of 1 will be 1, the cube value of 2 will be 8, then cube of 3 is 27, cube of 4 is 64, and the cube of 5 is 125. So now if we print it, so now we got 1, 8, 27, 64 and 125, which is the cube values of this old list items, because here we are storing number into number into number. And let's say we just store one number. So for number in old list, and we are storing number. So here we are not modifying this number variable, we are just storing this number. So now this new list should store the same values as this old list. So if we try to print both new list and old list, it should be the same. So we have 1 2 3 4 5 and 1 2 3 4 5. So that's how we can use the list comprehension to create the list from other list or other iterables. So let's say, let's change this old list into old tuple. So now it's going to be a tuple, and let's store 2 4 6 8. Now we will create a new list from the old tuple. So let's change this old list into old tuple, and we are using this number variable to store each values of old tuple. And let's store number plus 1. So in the new list, each values should be plus 1 of old tuple. So this will be old tuple, and if we try to run this, so this is the tuple 2 4 6 8, and this is the list with each values with the addition of 1. So 2 became 3, 4 became 5, 6 became 7, and 8 became 9. So this list comprehension really helps to reduce the amount of code, and it is used a lot in Python. So that's the list comprehension, and that's gonna do it for this video. I'll see you soon with the next video. Till then, keep learning. Goodbye.